Hello, and welcome to NANcast. I'm Jill, your host. Have you ever stopped to think about the lasting impact you have on NICU families, not just in the moment, but for a lifetime? Today, we're joined by Martha and Paul Sharkey, founders of Today is a Good Day, a leading provider of NICU family support. They are NICU and bereaved parents whose twin daughters were born at just 23 weeks and 5 days. Through their journey, they experienced firsthand the incredible role nurses play in shaping a family's NICU story, and they've turned that experience into a mission to support families and elevate the work of NICU teams everywhere. Their story is powerful, emotional, and full of lessons for all of us caring for the tiniest patients and their families. Let's get right into it. So, Martha and Paul, thank you so much for joining me today. To start, can you take us back to the day your daughters were born and those very first moments you had in the NICU?
It was a pretty incredible, unbelievable, chaotic day, November 14th, 2010, when Claire and Mary were born. Martha and I found out that August that she was going to be pregnant, and not only pregnant, but doubly blessed with identical twin girls, and everything was really going well with the pregnancy. Martha was doing all her regular checkups. We had, of course, met with the high-risk doctor. And so when November came around, everything seemed to be going well. And then Martha just said, hey, something doesn't feel right. And Martha called the OBGYN, and she said, hey, just come in and go to triage, and I'm sure it's nothing, but you're going to want to get checked out.
So I was admitted to the hospital at 23 weeks and 0 days. Really, our lives changed forever that day. My parents drove immediately in. Paul's mom came over, and we were told that I would be on bed rest until the girls arrived. So we had big plans. We thought we were making it through Thanksgiving. This was November 9th of 2010. Our daughters were due March 8th of 2011. Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you're going to spend your holidays
Absolutely.
In the hospital.
Yes. So how are we going to do this? I was on strict bed rest, which I know has evolved over the past number of years since we were in the NICU and experienced this nearly 15 years ago. Thanksgiving, the holidays, kick off the new year because our daughters weren't due for several more months. I made it on bed rest for 5.5 days before Claire and Mary arrived. Claire weighed 1 pound 2 ounces and Mary weighed 1 pound 4 ounces. But I will share a story that we had when I was admitted to the hospital. One of the incredible neonatologists came to meet with us and do our consult. Probably the worst 2 hours of our entire lives. He sat down and talked to us about the prognosis for babies born at this gestational age, how it was very likely that both children would probably pass away if they were born at this time. And I'll never forget, he left. Paul and I were crying. Paul looked at me and he said, we're going to leave here with 2, 1, or none. And we're going to be okay, whichever path is chosen for us. So I feel like when we kicked off our NICU journey with Claire at 1-2 and Mary at 1-4, we didn't really know what to expect. So it was overwhelming for us. No one in our friend or family network had experienced the NICU.
No, and I think it's terrifying to hear those statistics and everything that the NEO tells you, or the NP or whoever is giving you those, the consultation as far as what does that mean? Because you said no one experiences the NICU, right, and no one expects to spend time in the NICU. So I can't imagine how overwhelmed it must be. And then you didn't have any real time to process that after. No. You didn't have the holidays to think about it. It was just, this is what it is. And
I will tell you, we look back, so for the listeners here, we appreciated the honest feedback and the honest conversation that the neonatologist had with us to say, this is what could happen. And some don't want to hear that. For us, it was great to hear, this is what could happen. And when we were in the NICU, Mary was our stronger twin. Claire had dropped to 15 ounces on day 3 of life. Mary ended up losing her fight after 14 days with us. And I remember talking to another neonatologist who had given us the news. Claire had a very difficult prognosis on day 3 of life, bilateral grade 3 and 4 bleeds. She was treated for meningitis, anemic. And we had gotten the rug for their room that was rolled up in a plastic
day.
bag. We had 2 cribs. We had the rug. We got the 1 crib out of the room, and the rug was still there. And I remember saying to the neonatologist, because after Mary died, we just weren't sure if Claire was going to make it. She was very sick. And I said, I'm going to leave that rug rolled up until you tell us that we can put the rug down, because that means that Claire's coming home. So just some stories that we remember.
Yeah. I mean, those are things that stand out to you the most when you reflect on your time, those beginning moments in the NICU.
Yeah, in terms of the beginning moments, a lot of what we're talking about here at the conference is the incredible power that nurses have. And Martha is rushed into an emergency C-section that day, November 14th, the day the girls were born. And I'm left in a hallway in Abington Hospital. And of course, all of the listeners know what those hallways look like. Bright white floor, blank white walls, and just bright overhead white lighting. And there was just one blue chair in the hallway. And they say, you stay here. And I remember just getting on my knees and praying that Martha's okay and the girls are okay and my eyes are closed. And in terms of the power of nursing, the first person to grab me by the shoulders was Nurse Kathy. And she picks me up and she says, it's time to go in and see your girls. And she walked me in and she said she never knew what shocked looked like until she saw me walking in to see Claire at 1.2 pounds and Mary at 1.4 pounds. And being born so early at 23 and 5, I mean, they were basically translucent. And 2 neonatologists and great team of NICU nurses are working on each daughter, each baby, intubating them, trying to save their life. And another incredible moment in terms of the power of nursing was Nurse Amanda telling me to get out of my comfort zone, which is another theme of our talk, because she started saying, touch your baby. Paul, touch your baby. And I must have been a natural NICU dad, because I said, my hands aren't clean. There's no Purell. And so they get me hand sanitizer, and I was so nervous because I just didn't, do no harm. But I remember with my finger touching Claire and touching Mary, and what they knew at the time, which I didn't, was that they really wanted me to do that because they didn't know if the girls were going to survive, and that might be our only time with them. So just so grateful for Kathy, Amanda, and the incredible nurses that were there the day the girls were born.
Yeah, it's amazing how the nurses kind of turn into like the anchors for the family, like in that beginning moments too. And you brought up a really good topic as far as dads and how we communicate with the fathers, because oftentimes, we're worried about the mom, but then there you were alone,
right,
in the hallway.
Right.
What can we do as nurses to help make you feel more comfortable, or what would you tell nurses that you would need or a father would need in that time frame?
I would say dads appreciate honesty and they appreciate directness. I think a lot of times when you're being asked to kind of figure it out on your own, and of course most dads are not going to be medical professionals or have any kind of knowledge of the NICU or the medical terms being shared. So I would just say straight talk for dads is really important. And not only, hey, you need to take care of your spouse and take care of these babies, you need to take care of yourself, right? Self-care is going to be really important because mom is going to be recovering. You need to make sure things are going well at home, checking in with the care team here at the hospital. So I would just say being forthright, be direct with dads, communicate, and we can handle it.
I know, because I think we always just see the dads in the corner, like the deer in headlights, and it's I can't imagine the position you are in, like almost in limbo. Like, where am I supposed to be?
Right.
With mom or with the babies?
And I also think that bringing dads into the care team, so into the questions, working to include them in the conversations. Paul and I kept a daily journal. We wrote down all of the reports from the nurses and doctors. The nurses talk again about incredible power of nursing. Those nurses helped us to understand what the doctors are saying to us. We would write all of that information down. Paul would write many of the days because I was not feeling well or not in an emotional state to do that. And so being able to tie the dads into a piece of the care team, which I know is such a big topic right now, making sure that it's really family-centered care and that families are a part of all that is being done.
So obviously these nurses that cared for your daughters have made a lasting impact on you, and you can tell just by your lived experiences and your stories. And I think it's a powerful reminder to nurses to know that, we get so wrapped up in like the clinical component sometimes and just the day-to-day. This is our day-to-day. We go to the delivery room, we resuscitate a baby, we bring them back to the NICU. But to you, it's a life-changing experience, a lot of unknowns. Like you said, being alone in a white, brightly lit hallway, but we don't look at it like that, So you had mentioned earlier that nurses have incredible power. What do you wish every nurse understands about the impact that they have on their families?
I would say they have a strong impact to help guide a family's NICU experience. And we'll give you this pivotal moment that we had very early on in our NICU journey. Claire and Mary were born. As I shared, Claire dropped to 15 ounces. Mary was still with us. We were 1 week into our NICU stay. Claire had gotten a very devastating prognosis. We weren't sure if she would walk or talk, if she survived. And the nurse who was taking care of Claire looked at us and said, you two need to go back into the NICU conference room. There is a mom with her former 23-weeker hosting a pizza lunch, which we would not have known about had the nurse not told us. And of course, and all the listeners will appreciate this, we did anything that the NICU nurses told us to do. But she said, go back and meet Anne-Marie and Sam. It was a turning point for us just 7 days into our NICU stay. We went back, we walked in, both girls are fighting for their lives just behind the double doors into the NICU. And here is Sam sitting across the table. We can still see the seat that he was sitting in. He was 3 years old at the time, former 23-weeker, playing on his mom's iPhone. So when I tell you that gave us so much hope and inspiration, that when we went back, and sadly we lost Mary 1 week later, but Paul and I looked at each other almost on a daily basis and said, Sam Muscatello was successful, Claire can be successful. And we've stayed in touch with the family over the years.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sam is now heading into his freshman year of college,
Wow.
playing football at Gettysburg College. He continues to be a huge inspiration for us. But when we talk about the power of nursing, that's a prime example, right? You have the power to help guide a family's NICU experience, and that ties into the idea of getting families out of their comfort zone. One of the things that we talk about with Mary, the day that she passed away, we were really, it was a very quick turnaround. She got sick right around Thanksgiving. She ended up passing away that Sunday, but she was on max medical care as she was heading where we knew she was going to pass away. The nurse who was taking care of her, is a dear friend of ours, she said, do you want to do kangaroo care? Well, at that point, it was a time when they didn't do skin to skin right away, the way that it's done now. So we had not held either girl, and we were 2 weeks into our NICU stay because they were so fragile. We said no. Oh. And to this day, it's the biggest regret that we ever had.
Would you have liked the nurse to have pushed you more?
Yes. So when we talk about the power and getting families out of their comfort zone, that is where you have the power. Push the families to make the memories. And I know nurses have done this for families that we know who have gone through loss, who have said, do you want these pictures? I will put them in an envelope for you. You never have to look at them. But let me take some photos for you, because in the moment, you may not know any better. We didn't even know what kangaroo care was at the time. And we held that regret forever.
And you're still talking about it. Yeah.
Right.
I think some people, nurses, are afraid to push. And because if the mom says no or the family says no, then they don't want to be, considered like rude or pushy. Like, you don't want to hold your baby. But I think you don't realize some of those, like the nurse telling you that there's this old ex-23-weeker, like somebody just fostered that connection for you. And that was such a little thing that nurse did, and probably didn't even know that was going to have such a profound impact on you.
Yeah, for all the nurses listening, I would say use our family as that example of, we still talk about it 15 years later, where you all with that clinical background, you know that kangaroo care isn't going to hurt the baby, right? Mm-hmm. Especially a baby that's about to expire. Help give that confidence. The answer still might be no for the family, but I think we just said no okay. Right. It probably would have been helpful in retrospect to have more of a dialogue around it.
Like why, what are your fears or what's holding you back from wanting to do that?
Correct.
And maybe that's a simple, the nurse could have explained to you, like, there's going to be a lot of us here to help you hold. And
Correct.
We're going to.
You're not going to hurt the baby by doing this, right?
But I think that is the idea of what you're talking about, is thinking creatively around how you engage the parents, right? And this goes back to the example that I have from a friend of mine who lost her child at full term, did not want the photos, was just so taken off guard that the baby had passed in utero. And that nurse said, you don't have to look at these photos. Mm-hmm. Just let me take them for you, and I will put them in a sealed envelope, and you can decide if you ever want to look at them or if you don't. And that, I think, is thinking outside the box, because that mom looks at those photos and to this day says, I'm so grateful that I have them. So the parents are in a very high emotional state, just like we were. And so helping to guide that conversation. And I think you're exactly right. Why don't you want to do that? What is holding you back from doing that? Because we do regret it 15 years later.
And on that same note, where we regret not holding Mary on the day she passed, one of the nurses that was with us that day, out of her own pocket and out of her own generosity, went and bought a little Christmas ornament, which was an angel with Mary on it. Aww. And we still proudly hang that ornament in the very front of our tree every year for the past 15 years. So that's the power of nursing too. That's how nurses create the memories for families. Nobody asked her to do this. She went out of her own pocket, but that it meant so much to us that day, with so few touchstones that you have with infant and child loss. That's an incredible touchstone that we have created by that nurse.
That's amazing. And it's powerful, and it shows your true statement that we do have power in nursing. But I think it's like you said, thinking outside the box. And, just like you guys have to try to get out as parents out of your comfort zone, I think nurses need to get outside of their comfort zone. And It's not just clinical care that we're doing, but we're also caring for the family, whether, talking to the family, just being present, showing compassion and thinking outside the box.
Yes. I remember the first time that I held Claire. It was a week after Mary had passed away, and I was terrified. She still had a vent. And I went, what do you, I was excited and yet completely terrified. And Nurse Jen, who was Claire's primary nurse throughout her entire 3.5 months in the NICU, said, we're going to do this. Sit down in the chair. I brought in a button down, still have the picture from that day. And she goes, we're doing this. And I didn't move. Paul took a video. I'm not sure I breathed.
You're a statue.
For an hour and a half when I held Claire. But she pushed me to do that. And she said, we're going to do this day. And then I think you got to hold her the next day or the day after. Yeah, which was pretty powerful.
And I think it's a good reminder that, maybe you have to be a nurse and take some risks, and having kind of the difficult conversations with parents, like we said, you're going to do this, yes. Sit in the chair, put your shirt, button down shirt on and do skin to skin.
Well, and what you're hearing too is this is also our presentation, in addition to our family story, is all about key takeaways, harnessing your superpowers as nurses, key takeaways for the power of nursing. And this all really ties into our third line item there. Our third list is help make the memories. And so you hear us talking about all these memories. Nurse Lisa bringing us the ornament for Mary. And then also our son William, we had a loss. So we have 4 children. 2 are here with us and 2 are keeping watch from above, as we like to say.
I love that.
But when we look at our experience with our son William, who was born in 2018, 8 years apart from when we lost Mary, that experience was a lot different, but the memory making piece was also a lot different for us. And it was so powerful.
I guess that's where I'll step in. Thanks, Martha. So, yes, it was very powerful. 8 years later, with William, it felt like a very different experience. And now, of course, based on his diagnosis of trisomy 18, the care team had said, hey, he may be stillborn. You may have him for a few minutes. You may have him for a few hours. So we knew that our time with him, if at all, was going to be short. The amazing part was that the care team at that time said, what do you want? What memories do you want to make with William? Is it important for him to meet a family pet? Do you want him to taste chocolate? What do you want to do with his sisters? And they at the time gave us a number of canvases that before William's birth, Claire, Martha Rose, Martha, and I were able to do our own handprints and then our own footprints. And then the day William was born, we were able to do that with him and add his footprints and handprints to our family canvas, which is amazing. We also were able to sing happy birthday to William. We were able to have William baptized with all of his aunts and uncles and grandparents in the room. The girls were able to read a book, and I love it because it was called The Most Magnificent Thing, which I thought was a very appropriate book for the day William was born. But one of the things that we would say in our incredible sadness, the nurses created joy for us and our family. And one of the things we had bought at Michael's or some craft shop was one of these kind of plaster things where you can like put your hands in and make prayer hands. The joy. And so what we did, it was a great idea, but we ended up putting William's little body in, but he was too big and too long, so we only ended up getting the bottom of him. So to this day, we have this little plaster thing with William's feet and legs, and we keep it next to his photo
Paul's hand.
with my hand around his butt. But so it was. It's silly, but it was great. And we're sitting there because the nurses didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to do it. And poor Martha's trying to recover, and we're laughing in the next room.
Well, I think that was a pivotal memory for me because I did not feel well after the C-section and everything had gone so quickly. We brought family in right away. I mean, it was very, very quick. They said, we're going to get you back to the room as quickly as possible so that all the family can come in and try to meet him because we don't know how long we have with him. And here I am, just not feeling very well at all. And this laughter that I hear coming because we were in one of the bereavement rooms that they have in a section of our hospital. And I hear the two nurses and Paul just laughing so much. And I thought, you know what? That was our day. That was our day that was filled with such sadness. But the joy on Claire and Martha Rose's face, holding their baby brother, dressing him in a Today is a Good Day shirt and a pair of Claire's preemie pants, and reading to him and just spending time with him. Claire didn't want to give him back. I still remember she said, she's just the most beautiful baby brother I've ever seen. And we had prepped them. He had a double cleft lip and he had very key signs of trisomy 18. And we had some long conversations with him. But the care that the nurses took, and one of the other pieces that was so important in the OR, Nurse Sandy, who was the bereavement manager at our hospital, brought a camera in on her own and took pictures of William right after he was born. And it's the only picture we have. Paul is doing what was the one thing we didn't do with Mary. And when the nurses said, what do you want to do after William's born? Kangaroo care. And so there's a picture of Paul holding him. It was the only time he opened his eyes. And the big smile behind Paul's mask of holding him like that. And that was all captured because a nurse helped to make the memories for us.
And the importance of nursing and that lasting impact that you have on the families and the babies that you care for. The nurse that walked us into the OR that morning when we had to say goodbye to William was Nurse Kathy, who lifted me up and walked me into the room 8 years earlier when Claire and Mary were born.
And that must have felt
awesome.
Pretty special.
Amazing. It was just the love from Kathy and just the peace that brought and the comfort that brought. incredibly special.
But that is where, as in the health system, in the health setting, in the hospital setting, the nurses set that up to make sure that Kathy was there that day because they knew how important it would be to us. And that's that extra step, right? That's that extra step for a family. Because look, we're still talking about it.
Exactly. It's beautiful. You've been talking about all of these keepsakes that you have and, how important memory making is, because that's something obviously you've cherished forever. And you still have it out, and the ornament that's up. I mean, that's the importance of taking it one step more than what you're required to do.
And 100%. And those are the memories in the sad times, right? Those are for the babies that don't make it. We have so many incredible memories with Claire and her 103-day journey in the NICU, for all of the milestones and memory making that the NICU nurses provided for us, right? That first bottle, that first skin-to-skin care. Nurse Erica saying, "You're going to put down the rug," right? All of those memories were just, they made us an active part of the care team. They got us out of our comfort zone. They also very much prepared us for when Claire came home in February. There was no fear. There was no fear for us to be able to bring Claire home because we knew we were so well prepared based on what the nurses had taught us during our time.
Paul, no fear. I think they had to kick us out of the NICU.
We did appreciate having 120 full-time medical professionals watching our child 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they prepared us very well to bring her home.
And it seemed they had you really well trained too, that you listened
Correct.
to everything they said too.
Don't look at the monitors.
Yes.
Look at the baby.
Yes. That's like the number one thing I think we say every day.
Yes.
To parents all the time. And I think memory making is really important, obviously, after listening to you, but I think sometimes, especially for newer nurses to the NICU, that can be a really difficult time for them. They're processing the loss of your child, and I think they have a hard time approaching a family. What would you say to those nurses to help them be more comfortable in allowing you to create those memory-making opportunities?
I would say acknowledgement. Just like I shared when we talk to families who are experiencing loss, and one of the hardest questions that as a parent you have to answer is, "Oh, how many kids do you have?" Right? And our answer has changed over the years. I would say yours, Paul, more than mine over the years in how you kind of answer that. When Claire and Mary, we have a daughter at home, or we would say, "Oh, we have 2 daughters at home," because that was the truth, right? But at this point, we've gotten to a stage where we say, we have 4 children, 2 are here with us, 2 keep and watch from above. And that can open a door for people to have a conversation with you, or it can make some people feel awkward. It is not awkward for us. And what I would say to the new nurses is a family never forgets their child who has passed away. So you mentioning their name is not going to hurt them. Instead, it's going to say, "Oh, somebody acknowledges that I have a daughter, I have a son who was here with us who passed away." So I think acknowledgement is a key piece, and talking to families about what is important to you right now.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to say. Like, that helps get the conversation started and let the family kind of direct the nurse as to what their wishes are.
Yeah, I would add for new nurses, lean on the more experienced nurses. Not every story has to be your own, but being able to talk to nurses that have been through it, that have dealt with these situations, that have counseled families and helped families like ours, pass that knowledge on to the new nurses so that they then have some story or some touch point that they can go to, like listening to this podcast, that will help them in terms of dealing with families when they're in that situation, even though it might be a first or second time for them.
Yeah, and I think, finding a nurse that is competent in it and has experience in it, and that one that you admire or you inspire to be, like, go into the room with them when they're talking to a family and learn from them and their interactions. So we're talking a lot about all the wonderful experiences that you've had and the memory making and the experiences with the nurses, but I'm sure that there's a lot of gaps that we find, just like we were talking with the newer nurses and nurses being able to get out of their comfort zone and also teaching families to get out of their comfort zone. And because of these gaps, you started an organization, Today is a Good Day. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Well, we did see the gap in care. So we spent 3.5 months in the NICU, loved the medical team. We saw what they were doing for the babies, including ours, who were spending time in the NICU. But where we saw that gap in care for us was the connection between families, parent to parent, being able to find a community, because as we shared, we didn't have anyone within our friend or family network who had experienced the NICU. So there really wasn't anyone for us to talk to. So again, pivotal moment for us. When Mary passed away, there was a couple there who also had twin girls. They saw the day that Mary had passed away. We hadn't met them yet. We'd see them passing, hand washing station going into the NICU. Our NICU was set up in pods, so it was more of a public open space. We also saw the day that their daughter, Jenna, passed away. And after that moment, we became fast friends. So Claire and Samantha were next to each other in the NICU. We went to dinner with the family, with those two, at least 2 to 3 times a week during nurse shift change. And we became each other's support system through the NICU. The girls ended up graduating a day apart, and they just performed a duet at our recent Miracle Ball Gala for Today
Oh my
is a Good
gosh.
Day. So their friendship is forever. We call them soul sisters.
Oh, they definitely are.
Right. But that was a friendship that we created, right? And we were the type who wanted to make those connections and find people. The pizza lunch was the only one that we had in the 3.5 months we were in the NICU. There wasn't another one that we knew of. So we saw that gap, which is why we founded Today is a Good Day. And Paul, do you want to share why we call our organization that?
Sure, Martha, I'll hop in here. So we named the organization Today is a Good Day because Martha and I were both working while the girls were in the NICU, and we would call the NICU and check in multiple times a day. And when the nurses or one of the neonatologists would say, "Today is a good day for Claire," it would just melt our hearts, because as you know, as we all know, there's so many steps forward, there's so many steps back. It's truly a roller coaster. And that ability to hear "Today is a good day for Claire" just really was so uplifting for us that's why we named it, the organization, Today is a Good Day, because we know even though there might be bad moments, challenging times, overall, the longer you're in the NICU, you're going to start stacking more of these good days up, and that's how you finally get to graduate.
And looking at Today is a Good Day and the resources we've been able to provide for families and the programming, that comes to our next key takeaway for nurses, which is find the resources. We wanted Today is a Good Day to be a resource for families, providing care packages and emotional support. We have a NICU Today podcast. We have NICU family advocates who are bedside in the hospitals, out in the community, finding resources. So that's for Today is a Good Day. But I also would encourage the listeners here, when is the last time that you looked at the resource list that your NICU provides to families who are being discharged? For many of the hospitals that we go to, it's been a minute since that list has been reviewed. The links might be outdated. It might only be on paper. Is it digital? Can you share it with families in an easy way? And what is on there? Are there any local organizations that might have resources to provide for families? If there is not someone on staff who can help to take the lead on that, is there a committee that could get together? Because that is a way to improve that patient experience, that patient family experience in the NICU, but also help bridge that gap from NICU to home for families who are being discharged. So finding those resources, food banks, the WIC office, Social Security, the local organizations that can help, early intervention contacts, all those different things, find the resources, and every family might need something different.
Yeah, and I can't imagine having to navigate that on your own with a brand new baby has complex medical needs at home, and then trying to figure all that out, unless you had no fear like you did after, like Paul did when the babies went home.
No fear.
No fear.
How could we fear? Because Claire was sent home on a heart monitor that would wake the dead most times, even though they were all false alarms. So we did feel prepared. But of course, there was fear. There was trepidation in terms of having this new baby home. But again, back to the power of nursing, we were as prepared as we could be to take on that challenge.
And then, with Today is a Good Day, you're providing those resources to families. So it's one less worry or, fear that they're going to have, when they go home at discharge.
Yeah, I really encourage the listeners, check out todayisagoodday.org. There are a lot of free resources available on the website. We also have a brand new piece of the website, our post-NICU resources. Now, they're mainly focused at this time in the region where a majority of our hospitals are located, which is in the tri-state area of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. But those post-NICU discharge resources are so key as well.
So are those some of the tools that you wish every NICU had access to? I mean, obviously, if they're not lucky enough to be around a Today is a Good Day hospital, but if out west, where would they go to find that? Like, what kind of tools do you think that they definitely need to be successful?
To be honest with you, I think, the good news is Today is a Good Day is national, so happy to talk to anyone. But I would say from the health system perspective, this is where it comes back to what are some of the priorities of the unit, right? And it is simple Googling. We have a special projects committee at Today is a Good Day that's made up of several volunteers who love to do some of these key projects. They spent a chunk of time researching post-NICU discharge resources within our region. And that simple task opened up a whole world for us. Our NICU family advocates are out in the community, but a simple search on what is available around you. NICU resources near me, right? Figure out what your Google search, your whole discharge packet could look a lot different next year.
I would just say in terms of our fifth main takeaway for all the nurses is to remember your why. Remember why you got into nursing, why you want to help these families and help these critically ill babies. I think for us, Today is a Good Day was what became our why. Based on our experience in the NICU, seeing the gaps in cares that existed for parents, you all did an incredible job taking care of our babies, right? All 4 of our children had incredible medical care. When we look back and think about that first pizza lunch with Sam Muscatello, we saw what good looked like for a 23-0 micro-preemie. We never heard anything about what would happen when a NICU baby doesn't survive or doesn't make it through the NICU. And that's where we said, okay, we want to find resources, create resources to make this journey, make this experience better for families that are going to come after us. And so that's why we created the community of Today is a Good Day to provide hope and build community through personal and financial support for families who have experienced the NICU. But for nurses, right, always come back to what's your why? We know there are nursing shortages. We know nurses are underpaid. We know burnout is extremely high. So what we're asking the nurses to do is try to take time, recharge, bring it back to why did I get into this field? Why did I get into this profession? Hopefully everything you've heard from Martha and me today is you are going to make a lifelong impact on the members or the patients that you serve.
Absolutely. And like you said, hearing the lived experience from families, I think reinforces most NICUs why we're doing it. Because from the nurse that picked you up and took you into the delivery room and the profound impact that had on you. And, it's so nice to hear you talk about the nurses and mention them by name and how you think about them this far later, because oftentimes the families leave the NICU doors and we never see them again. And we don't know that impact that we have. So when we have conversations like this, then it helps reinforce and bring us back to, we are making a difference, and this is why we're doing it.
Yeah, and some of those relationships we took with us from the NICU, they don't want to go back to the NICU. They don't want to relive it. And they say, Martha and Paul, hey, that's amazing that you've kind of gotten into this space and have dedicated so much time and effort. We're glad that that chapter is over. We're moving forward. With that said, they still speak about each of the nurses very fondly when we're having those conversations. So even though you might not retain an ongoing relationship like we've been fortunate enough to, through the work we do with Today is a Good Day, every family will remember that impact and those memories you helped to create.
And that's powerful.
It is powerful. We always say nurses are superheroes. And again, the 5 key takeaways we want to leave the listeners with today. You have incredible power. Get out of your comfort zone by helping families get out of their comfort zone. Make the memories with the families. It's so important. Think about what we shared today and how those memories have stayed with us, both physically and emotionally, from all of our experiences with our children. Find the resources for families. Every family might need something a little different, but take a look at that resource guide that your hospital, your unit has. And then, as Paul shared, remember your why.
So thank you, Martha and Paul, for sharing your story. It was so inspiring and impactful. And I think it's clear that every word we say as a nurse, every gesture we do to the family, and every moment we share with the family stays with them for a lifetime. And that is super powerful. So thank you.
Make sure you never miss an episode of Nancast by subscribing now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thanks for your support and letting us into your ears. Have a great day.